So he's saying this to them, and then he says at the very end, he says, it's been granted to you that for the sake of Christ, it's been granted to you. Not sentenced to you, not punished to you. It's been granted to you that for the sake of Christ, you should not only believe in Him, but you should also suffer for His sake. You know, we were having my son making faces at the door. Now, is it a manner of the gospel if I break his legs after this? Okay, sorry. So, we're at Passion this past week, and in Francis Chan's talking about suffering and getting out there, and he's realizing that he hasn't suffered anything for the gospel. And I think some of the students walked away feeling like we need to go look for suffering. I don't believe that's what he's saying. I believe if you're not careful, you would make suffering for the gospel sort of an idol in itself, kind of like a lot of people make worship an idol, where anything else in your Christian life becomes elevated so high, seeking out the gifts or whatever those things might be, it can become more important than your actual walk with Jesus. But in the way Jesus is, I believe, saying is, you should be so about me that as you're coming to me and taking me to the world, as suffering gets in the way, you go through it, right? So I don't think David ever set out to face a giant. He was following Jesus, and a giant got in the way. So the giant had to be dealt with. Does that make sense? So a lot of us might think, you know, I don't know what suffering really means. I mean, there are people in other countries, you know, being tortured as you're watching this video for their faith. So what is suffering for me? Well, suffering is this. Think about right now, what does it take to shut you down? When you know it's time to share the gospel, when you know it's time to love somebody like Jesus, and you don't, what is it that stops you? By our own admission, that is the level of suffering that we can handle right now as believers. If it's someone rolling their eyes when I open my Bible, if that shuts me down, that's about as much suffering apparently that I can handle. It is what it is, right? So what we need to understand is, for the sake of the gospel, somewhere between me and getting the truth to a friend, it may cost me something. It may cost me some embarrassment. It may cost me a promotion one day. It may cost me being on a team. It may cost me something. It may cost me a relationship. But the gospel has to be the point. That's not something you can get excited about from a Devo and go do. It's not going to happen. But if you are digging in and you are soaking up and allowing God to breathe into your life and change things a little bit at a time, if you start letting Him say things in you when you know He wants you to your friends, you start loving people a little bit more like Him, He's going to put you in some positions where you realize, I think this is about to cost me if I do this. And you'll be amazed what you do. You'll be amazed what you see God do when you step out and not only live a life that's worthy of the gospel, but always be ready to give a reason for the joy that you have. There's somebody in your life right now that I would venture to say you may not be sharing the gospel with because of something. It's because of embarrassment. It's because of rejection. It's because you think they're probably smarter than you. You think they may know more than you do. You know, there are a lot of people that can refute your logic, but they cannot refute your testimony. You tell your story. You tell them what God has done in you, that you were once dead and now you are alive. And that's your story, and you can not only tell that, but God is calling us to live a life worthy of that story. Let's keep digging in. See you guys tomorrow.